What happens when a daytime talk show built on light banter suddenly becomes the epicenter of an emotional storm no one saw coming? Before we dive into the moment that left the studio frozen and millions stunned, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, like this video, and drop a comment below, because what you're about to witness is one of the most unexpected and heartbreaking on-air breakdowns to ever unfold on The View. It began like any other episode, with the familiar hum of studio lights warming the stage and the audience buzzing in that pre-show excitement. The host strolled out, smiling, greeting the crowd, settling into their seats. Cameras glided on their tracks, capturing every angle, every expression, every hint of tension. Though no one realized yet that tension was already simmering beneath Kristen Bell's carefully composed smile. She had been invited to promote her new project, a film that blended humor with emotional depth, and the producers expected an easy, upbeat interview. Kristen was known for her bright energy, her charm, her infectious laugh, the sort of guest who made everyone feel comfortable. But today, something in her eyes suggested weight, a heaviness she was trying very hard to hide. It was subtle, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. But Joy Behar, with her sharp instincts and even sharper tongue, was always looking. The opening minutes flowed smoothly. Sunny Hostin leaned toward Kristen with a warm smile. "We're so happy you're here," she said, her tone genuine. "The film looks incredible. I watched the early screening and I cried." Kristen smiled softly. "Thank you. It means a lot. This one, it came from a very personal place." The camera lingered on her for a beat too long. Long enough for viewers at home to notice the slight quiver in her jaw, the way her fingers brushed against each other nervously. But the audience in the room, unaware of what was coming, applauded cheerfully. Joy leaned back in her chair, arms folded casually. "Well, you know us," she said, tossing her red hair back. "We don't let people come on here and keep secrets. So, Kristen, what personal place are we talking about?" The question was light, teasing, but there was an edge to it. There was always an edge with Joy. Kristen laughed softly, but it wasn't fully formed. It was one of those laughs meant to cover discomfort. "Well," she began, taking a breath, "the film explores anxiety and the internal pressures we put on ourselves. And, I've been pretty open about my own struggles with that." The audience let out a sympathetic, "Ah," the kind that floats gently, without judgment. But Joy wasn't done. "Open," Joy repeated, tilting her head. "You've mentioned it in interviews, sure. But there's talking about anxiety, and then there's what we've been hearing behind the scenes." The entire air in the room shifted. The studio felt suddenly still. Even the Steadicam operator seemed to pause, lens tightening on Kristen's face. Kristen blinked, confusion and a flicker of panic crossing her expression. "Behind the scenes?" she echoed softly. "What do you mean?" Sunny shot Joy a warning look, subtle but clear. "Joy," she said under her breath, barely audible to viewers but painfully obvious to those on set. But Joy pushed forward, her voice louder now, projecting that trademark mix of humor and provocation. "We're a show about honesty," Joy said. "So why not tell our audience what really happened last week? The thing you told producers. The thing you didn't want us to bring up." There was a visible jolt through Kristen's body, a micro-freeze. A hit she hadn't braced for. Her gaze darted toward the producers offstage, her breath caught, and her fingers tightened around the edge of her chair. The audience murmured, leaning forward. "Joy, seriously," Sunny said, this time more firmly. "This isn't the time." But Joy lifted her hands. "Hey, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. We can't have authenticity if we tiptoe around issues." "Kristen, you had what you called a moment. Isn't that the word you used?" Kristen's throat tightened. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The silence expanded, stretching across the stage like a shadow. Whoopi Goldberg, sitting at the far end of the table, finally stepped in. Her voice dropped to that low, grounding tone she used when things got too heated. "Joy," she said, "back up a little." "I'm not attacking her," Joy fired back. "I'm giving her an opportunity to address it. She was emotional. That's okay. Happens to the best of us." Kristen's eyes lowered. That small movement, the soft collapse of her expression, signaled a shift. This wasn't an actress playing a part. This was a woman suddenly exposed on live television, walls crumbling in front of an audience of millions. I didn't think we were talking about that," Kristen whispered. Her voice was small, delicate, like something fragile trying not to break. Sunny reached across the table, her hand open, palm upward. "You don't have to," she said gently. "We can pivot. Talk about the movie." or anything else. It's your call. But Joy, relentless, leaned forward. We don't have to get into details. Just tell people you're okay. Or not okay. Because when public figures disappear from events, people talk. A pin could have dropped in that silence. Kristen inhaled shakily, her composure slipping. Joy continued, softer now but still piercing. When you left that charity gala early, people noticed. And you were visibly upset. No shame in that. But pretending nothing happened? That's not healthy, is it? Kristen's eyes lifted, glossy, vulnerable. I'm not pretending, she said. I wasn't ready. The audience softened, murmuring in empathy. But Joy's expression held steady, firm. Then why not be ready now? Joy asked. You're here. You're talking about anxiety. This is part of it, isn't it? And that's when something in Kristen cracked. A tremor ran through her voice as she tried to speak. Because it wasn't just anxiety, she said. Her breath hitched. It was more complicated. And when I told the producers, it wasn't to put it on TV. It was because I needed a moment. Just a moment. Her voice broke on the last word. Visibly. Audibly. Whoopi raised a hand at the control room, signaling to cut to commercial, but the producers hesitated. They knew what they were witnessing. Something raw, something real, something that would dominate social media within seconds. Kristen swallowed hard, eyes glistening. I'm trying, she whispered. I'm trying to hold myself together. The audience gasped as her voice wavered again, thicker now. Joy's face shifted, a flash of regret, brief but unmistakable. Kristen, I didn't mean. Kristen shook her head, wiping at her cheek. You did, she said gently, not accusing, just stating a truth. You meant to push. And normally I can handle that. But today it's different. Her breath trembled. I've been struggling. A lot more than I've let people know. And I know I'm supposed to be the happy one, the funny one, the strong one. I know people expect that. But sometimes I can't meet those expectations. A tear slipped down her cheek, and the entire studio reacted. A soft, collective exhale. A shared ache. Whoopi leaned in, voice low. We can stop, Kristen. We don't have to keep going. But Kristen shook her head again. No, I don't want to run away. That's what I always do when things get too heavy. I smile, I crack jokes, I deflect. But I can't do that right now. Joy swallowed, her posture collapsing slightly, guilt weighing her down. I should have been kinder, Joy murmured. I don't know what I thought. But I didn't think you were this close to. She didn't finish the sentence. Kristen exhaled, her voice barely steady. I know you weren't trying to hurt me. But you crossed a line I wasn't ready to cross. The producers frantically whispered among themselves, torn between cutting the segment or letting it continue. The cameras remained locked in, capturing every raw detail. Kristen's trembling hands, Joy's uneasy expression, Whoopi's protective stillness, Sunny's quiet concern. The tension settled into the room like fog. Heavy. Unavoidable. Kristen took another breath, and it wavered. The gala. I left because I had a panic attack. A really bad one. Worse than usual. And when I said that to the producers, it was in confidence. I didn't expect it to be brought up here. Joy lowered her eyes. No jokes. No retorts. Just remorse. The audience murmured again, this time with a mix of surprise and compassion. Kristen continued, voice fragile but determined. I didn't want to make it a storyline. I just needed space. Another tear fell. Whoopi's voice softened, warm and grounding. You don't have to share anything you don't want to. Not here. Not anywhere. Kristen nodded, but her breath shook again. I know. But now that it's out, I feel like I owe everyone an explanation. No, you don't, Sunny interjected gently. You don't owe the world your pain. Kristen looked down at her hands, twisting in her lap. But I've spent my whole life being a people pleaser, she whispered. And that's part of what's breaking me. And then something unexpected happened. The audience, in an unplanned wave of empathy, began applauding softly. Not the loud, performative cheering for jokes or dramatic moments, but a warm, encouraging applause that wrapped around her like a blanket. Kristen's eyes lifted, shimmering. For the first time since the segment began, she took a steady breath. Joy leaned forward, speaking quietly. I'm sorry, Kristen. Kristen didn't respond with anger, only tired honesty. I know. The camera zoomed in closer. Too close. Close enough to capture the exact moment her composure finally gave out. Her lips trembled, her eyes glistened, and her breath broke into a sob. The studio froze. Joy reached out, hesitating, then gently placed her hand on Kristen's forearm. a gesture that surprised even her co-hosts. Kristen didn't pull away. She just closed her eyes, letting the moment wash over her. And that was when the screen slowly faded to black as the producers finally made the call. Cut to commercial. But the damage, emotional, personal, and soon to be public, had already been done. The commercial break lasted 120 seconds, but for everyone inside that studio, it felt like an eternity suspended in thick, breathless silence. The lights dimmed but not fully. The crew whispered but didn't move much. Even the audience, usually chattering and buzzing during breaks, remained frozen in their seats, unsure whether they should look away out of respect or stare because the moment was simply too heavy to ignore. Kristen Bell sat hunched forward, elbows resting on her knees, her fingers trembling as she wiped at her eyes with a tissue someone from the crew had quietly placed into her hand. Her shoulders rose and fell unevenly as she breathed, steadying herself, trying to regain control. But it wasn't simple control she was chasing. It was dignity, composure, the illusion that everything was fine. The illusion that had just been shattered live on national television. Whoopi leaned toward her, voice low and gentle. "Take your time, baby. We don't have to go back out there if you don't want to." Kristen shook her head immediately. "No, I don't want to disappear. That just makes everything worse." Joy stood several feet away, stiff, wringing her hands, a rare display of discomfort for someone who normally thrived in sharp, confrontational energy. She looked like she wanted to speak, but every time she opened her mouth, she closed it again, guilt weighing her down like an anchor. Sunny remained close, her chair pulled slightly toward Kristen, offering silent support. "You don't have to finish the segment," she repeated softly. "We can pivot. The producers will understand." "I don't want to run," Kristen whispered, voice fragile but resolute. "I've spent too long running from the things I don't want to feel." The countdown began in the background, a mechanical, rhythmic 10, 9, 8, echoing softly through the studio. The cameras relit. The audience sat up straighter. The hosts slipped back into their seats, adjusting their posture, their microphones, their expressions. But none of them, especially Kristen, looked the same. By the time the red-on-air light flicked back to life, the atmosphere was thick enough to feel on your skin. Whoopi took the lead, leaning forward slightly, hands folded. "We're back," she said gently, her voice softer than viewers had heard in a long time. "And I want to take a moment to acknowledge what happened before the break." The audience held their breath. "Live television," Whoopi continued carefully, "can sometimes take us places we don't expect. And emotions don't always wait for convenient timing." Kristen looked up, meeting the lens head-on for a brief moment. Her eyes were still glossy but steadier. Joy shifted uncomfortably, her voice quiet when she finally spoke. "Kristen, I want to say, I'm sorry. Truly. I pushed too hard. Sometimes I forget that real people sit in these chairs, not just stories." Kristen gave a small, shaky nod. "Thank you," she said softly. "I know you weren't trying to hurt me. It just landed on a tender spot." Joy exhaled, relieved but still visibly ashamed. The conversation might have ended there, tender, respectful, if not for the producer's insistence that they continue the interview. The show needed movement, momentum, clarity. And as much as the hosts hated admitting it, millions of viewers were leaning in. Sunny turned toward Kristen. "Only share what you want to share," she said, gently guiding the conversation back to safer ground. "We're here with you, not against you." Kristen took a deep breath. "I know," she murmured. "It's just, when Joy mentioned the gala, it brought everything back." The audience waited. Kristen swallowed, glancing down at her hands. "I've dealt with anxiety for a long time," she said slowly. "But the last few months have been different. Harder." Her voice wavered slightly. "A lot heavier." She looked up again, vulnerability etched into every line of her expression. What happened at the gala wasn't just a panic attack. It was a moment where everything came crashing down at once. Joy stiffened, listening intently. Kristen continued, voice husky but honest. "I'd been juggling work, family, personal stuff, and pretending to be fine through all of it. But that night, the mask just fell off." The audience watched with silent empathy. "I stepped outside for some air," she said. "And suddenly I couldn't breathe. Not metaphorically, literally. I felt like my chest was collapsing, like the world was closing in." Sunny nodded slowly, her expression soft with understanding. "And I hated that it happened in public," Kristen whispered. "I hated that I looked weak. I hated that I couldn't explain it. And I hated that people thought something was wrong with me." Her breath wavered, but she didn't break this time. She steadied herself. So I left. I left because I couldn't think straight. I couldn't speak. And when people started asking questions, I didn't know what to say. I didn't want it to become a headline. Joy flinched slightly, realizing the irony. But it did, Kristen added quietly. And today, I didn't expect it to come up. A beat of silence passed over the studio. Joy cleared her throat, voice measured. I should have talked to you privately first. Or not brought it up at all. I can't take that back, but I genuinely am sorry. Kristen nodded, and for a moment, they held eye contact. A quiet moment of mutual understanding between two women who rarely let themselves be this raw on camera. But then, just when it seemed like the emotional tension might ease, a voice rang out from the audience, unplanned, unexpected. We love you, Kristen. It broke the heaviness like a crack in the ceiling letting sunlight pour in. The audience applauded, louder this time, a wave of heartfelt support sweeping through the room. Kristen's chest rose with a shaky breath as she smiled, a real smile, small but sincere. Thank you, she whispered to the audience, touched. Whoopi waited for the applause to settle before asking softly, do you want to continue talking about it? Or should we move on to the film? Kristen hesitated, a long, telling pause, then nodded. Let's talk about it, she said. Because I think maybe I've been hiding for too long. The audience murmured with encouragement. Kristen tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The truth is, I've never felt comfortable talking about the darker parts of myself, she admitted. I always try to keep things light, happy, easy. But that's not real. At least, not all the time. Sunny nodded knowingly. It's human. But I didn't want people to worry, Kristen said. I didn't want to burden anyone. I kept thinking, if I just smile a little harder, laugh a little more, push through a little longer, maybe no one will notice. She exhaled, bitterly honest. But people do notice. And sometimes their noticing comes out in ways that feel harsh. Joy lowered her gaze, absorbing the indirect acknowledgement. Kristen continued. This past year has been the hardest of my life. I've been dealing with pressure I didn't know how to talk about. Expectations, external and internal. And I've been afraid of failing. Afraid of disappointing people. Afraid of not being enough. Her voice quivered. And that's what triggered everything at the gala. The audience leaned forward, captivated. I wasn't just anxious. I felt completely overwhelmed. Like I'd been carrying too much for too long. Her eyes glistened again, but she held steady. And when I came on The View today, I told myself, just get through it. Just smile. Just talk about the movie. But when Joy brought up the gala, it felt like someone had ripped open a door I'd been trying so hard to keep closed. Kristen paused, pressing her lips together. Joy spoke up again, her voice small. I crossed that line. And I won't pretend I didn't. I'm sorry, Kristen. Truly. Kristen didn't respond immediately. She looked down, then up, then back at Joy. I accept your apology, she said. I really do. But I'm still hurting. Joy nodded slowly. I understand. A soft, heavy quiet settled over the table. The kind of quiet that happens not out of tension, but out of emotional processing. Then Whoopi asked, Kristen, what's the hardest part about all this for you? Kristen closed her eyes briefly, gathering her thoughts. When she opened them again, her voice came out tender, vulnerable. Feeling alone, she said. Feeling like everyone else has it together except me. Feeling like I'm the only one falling apart. The audience let out a sympathetic sigh. Someone in the back whispered, You're not alone. And a few others nodded visibly. And feeling like, Kristen continued, if people really knew what I was going through, they wouldn't look at me the same. Sunny shook her head firmly. People look at you with more love when you're honest. Kristen offered a faint, teary smile. Maybe, but it's hard to believe that when you've spent your whole life trying to perform strength. Another beat passed. Then Joy asked tentatively, Can I ask something, and you can shut me down if it's too much? Kristen hesitated. Okay, when you left the gala, did something specific trigger it? Or was it everything at once? Kristen inhaled slowly, the tension returning to her shoulders. It was everything, she said softly. But there was one moment. The hosts remained quiet, letting her speak on her own terms. Kristen's fingers twisted around each other. Someone made a joke, a harmless joke, I think. About me always being the happy one. The chipper one. The girl who never stopped smiling. She swallowed. And it hit me harder than it should have. Because I felt like a fraud. Like I was disappointing everyone just by being human. She shook her head slightly. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I ran outside and felt like the ground was spinning under me. Joy closed her eyes, visibly remorseful. Kristen whispered, "And I didn't want people to see me like that. So when you brought it up today, it was like reliving the worst moment of the last year." Sunny reached out again, placing her hand gently over Kristen's. "Thank you for trusting us with that." Kristen nodded, tears threatening again but held back this time. The audience began to clap, soft, gradual, then growing in warmth. Not for the drama, not for the spectacle, but for the courage it took to say everything she had just said. Kristen glanced toward them, visibly moved, covering her mouth briefly as emotion swelled in her chest. Whoopi smiled gently. "You're stronger than you think." Kristen let out a shaky exhale. "I hope so." But then, unexpectedly, the tension shifted again. Because what no one anticipated was what Joy would say next. So, Joy began carefully. "What do you need right now? From us? From people watching? From the media who will definitely talk about this?" The question hung in the air, heavy, real, impossible to dodge. Kristen blinked, thinking. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "I need grace," she said. "I need people to stop expecting perfection. I need space to be human." The audience applauded again, louder this time, more earnest. "And I need people," Kristen added, voice breaking again, "to understand that even the happiest person in the room might be fighting a battle they're terrified to talk about." Her eyes glistened. "I guess. I just need kindness." The studio erupted, a wave of applause so strong the floor seemed to vibrate. Whoopi looked touched. Sunny looked emotional. Joy looked humbled. And the viewers at home, millions of them, had no idea that the moment was about to take yet another turn. Because this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of the unraveling. The beginning of the story the world would talk about for days. The applause slowly faded, but the emotional weight in the room didn't. If anything, it thickened, settling into the air with a strange, electric stillness. The producers were frantically whispering in their headsets, unsure whether to steer the show back towards something lighter or lean into the volatile mix of vulnerability and conflict that had glued the world's attention to their screens. But before they could decide, Joy Behar shifted in her seat, took a breath, and leaned forward. "Kristen," she said quietly, "I know you've been gracious, but I need to be honest. I'm not sure I deserve it." The audience murmured, surprised. Even Kristen looked taken aback. Joy continued, her voice steadier now but trembling at the edges. "I've been doing this show for a long time. A long time. And sometimes, I forget that my words don't just bounce off people. Sometimes they hit." She paused, swallowing. "And today, I hit you. Harder than I intended. Harder than I realized." The set fell into a deep silence. Even the buzz of the studio lights seemed to dim. Kristen watched her carefully, her expression soft and unreadable. Joy clasped her hands together. "I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't want to be part of the reason someone feels more alone. You don't deserve that. Nobody does." The audience responded with a soft, warm applause. Not loud, but sincere. A quiet gesture of support, of forgiveness, of recognition. Kristen inhaled deeply, her composure fragile but present. "Thank you, Joy," she said. "That means a lot." For a moment, the tension seemed to ease. But only for a moment. Because just as the atmosphere began to settle, the producers made a choice, one they would later regret. The giant monitor behind the hosts flickered on. And then came the headline. A live, breaking news-style graphic, bold and unavoidable. Kristen Bell's emotional breakdown on The View. Social media erupts. The audience gasped. Sunny turned sharply toward the control booth. "Seriously? Now?" The camera zoomed slightly out to capture all the hosts' reactions. Kristen's stunned, Whoopi's outraged, Joy's horrified. Kristen's breath hitched in her throat. "It's already online?" she whispered, her voice small, trembling. The monitor shifted again, now showing live comments, tweets, clips already circulating on social platforms. Edited, looped, sensationalized. The moment she cried. The moment she choked up. The freeze frame of her trembling hands. People were already typing. "Is Kristen Bell okay? Joy went too far. The View needs to chill." That was painful to watch. And the most damaging one of all. Kristen Bell breaks down on live TV. Kristen's entire face drained of color. Joy stood up halfway, furious. "Turn that off," she snapped. "What are you doing?" Sunny slammed her hand on the table, her composure cracking. "She's sitting right here. She's a human being, not a headline." Whoopi glared at the producers, her voice low and dangerous. "Do it now. The screen abruptly cut to black. But the damage? Already done. Kristen sat frozen, staring at the empty monitor as though it still showed her greatest fear looping over and over again. They're already posting it, she whispered. Her hands trembled. Not even 5 minutes. They're already. Whoopi leaned toward her. Honey, don't look at that. You don't need to look at that. But Kristen shook her head, her breath growing uneven. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Not the crying. Not the panic attack. This. Sunny reached for her arm. Kristen. This is why I never open up, Kristen said, her voice breaking into a harsh tremor. Because the second I do, the world picks it apart like it's entertainment. Her voice cracked at the word entertainment. Joy swallowed, devastated. Kristen, please. Don't blame yourself. Blame me. Blame the stupid monitor. But not yourself. Kristen shook her head again, tears pooling again. I'm tired of being a spectacle, she said. I already felt like I was drowning, and now. She motioned toward the dark screen. Now the world gets to watch. The audience, unsure what to do, fell silent. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Nothing. Sunny glanced toward Whoopi, a silent, we need to help her. Whoopi nodded subtly. Kristen, she said softly, listen to me. Right now you're feeling exposed. And that's real. And that's fair. But what that screen showed, that's not the whole story. The whole story is you sitting here, honest. Human. Brave. Kristen let out a shaky laugh, not joyful, not amused. Just exhausted. Brave, she whispered. I don't feel brave. I feel humiliated. No, Sunny said gently. What they posted was sensational. What you did was human. And humanity isn't humiliation. Joy finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You're not alone in this. We're here with you. Even if I messed up today, we're here. Kristen didn't respond this time. She just looked down, her shoulders curling inward as if bracing against the weight of the world. Then something unexpected happened. A woman in the audience stood up, waving discreetly to get the host's attention. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. I had a panic attack at my sister's wedding, she said loudly enough for the room to hear. And I felt the same shame you're describing. You're not alone. Another woman stood. I had one at work. People don't understand. Thank you for talking about it. A man stood next. Mine happened at a supermarket. I didn't tell anyone for years. Then another person. And another. One by one, the audience rose, a silent, powerful wave of solidarity. Within seconds, nearly half the crowd was on their feet. Kristen looked up, startled, overwhelmed, her eyes glistening with disbelief. Sunny covered her mouth, visibly moved. Whoopi exhaled deeply, eyes soft. See, you're not alone. Joy's gaze softened, moisture gathering at the corners of her eyes. The standing audience remained there, holding space for her, literally and metaphorically. Kristen blinked slowly, a soft tear rolling down her cheek. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Whoopi said. Just breathe. For the first time since the breakdown began, Kristen inhaled deeply. A breath that didn't shake, didn't falter. A breath that anchored her. She wiped her cheek and let out a whisper soft, thank you. The audience gently sat back down. But the moment wasn't done yet. Because in the control booth, the producers were panicking now. The show was going off script, off structure, off everything. And a voice came through the host's earpieces. We need to wrap this segment. Move to the film. Whoopi's face hardened. She didn't hide her irritation. We're not wrapping anything until she's okay, she muttered under her breath. Joy whispered harshly. Tell them to shove it. But the signal came again. Move on. Now. Sunny looked at Kristen with a conflicted expression. Kristen, do you want to continue? Or do you want to step backstage for a moment? Kristen hesitated, torn between dignity, professionalism, emotional vulnerability, and a desire to reclaim control over the narrative unfolding around her. And then she made a choice. No, she said softly. I want to keep talking. The hosts exchanged a look, a mix of respect and concern. Kristen continued, voice steadier now. I want people to understand that what happened today wasn't because I'm weak. It wasn't because I'm unstable. It wasn't because I'm some fragile celebrity who can't handle pressure. The camera zoomed in slightly as she wiped her cheek again. It happened because I'm human, she said. And because humans break sometimes. The audience clapped, slow and supportive. Kristen breathed in, gathering strength. And I want to address something else. Sunny leaned in. Of course. Kristen swallowed. I don't want anyone attacking Joy for this. Joy's eyes widened, surprised. Kristen added, she pushed too far. Yes, and it hurt, but she didn't do it to be cruel. She did it because she thought I could handle it. And normally she'd be right. Joy pressed a hand to her chest, moved beyond words. But today, Kristen continued, I was carrying a lot more than anyone realized, including me. Whoopi nodded slowly, admiringly. That's real talk. Joy took a shaky breath. Kristen, thank you. You didn't have to say that. But thank you. Kristen offered a small, tired smile. I meant it. The air in the studio shifted again, quieter now, but warm, gentle, almost soothing. But this piece wouldn't last long, because they were about to open the very wound that had been quietly bleeding beneath everything else. Kristen, Sunny asked softly, you mentioned earlier that this year has been the hardest of your life. Can you tell us why? Kristen's expression changed, subtly, but enough for everyone to notice. A shadow passed over her features. Her fingers tensed in her lap. Her gaze dropped, and for the first time in the entire interview, she hesitated. A long, heavy hesitation, because this was the part she had been avoiding. The part no one, not the hosts, not the producers, not the viewers, knew was coming. When she finally lifted her gaze, her eyes were shimmering with a different kind of pain. Not panic, not embarrassment, something deeper, something older, something raw. I haven't talked about this publicly, she said quietly. Not anywhere. Not with anyone outside my family. Joy leaned forward, concerned. Kristen, you don't have to. I do, Kristen said slowly, because hiding it is killing me. The audience tensed. The studio fell still. And then, in a trembling whisper, she said the words that would change everything. It's about something that happened years ago, something I never dealt with, something I never healed from. And it's the real reason everything has been falling apart lately. A chill ran through the room. Sunny's hand went to her heart. Whoopi's eyes widened. Joy leaned in, breathless. And Kristen inhaled, deep, shaky, gathering every ounce of strength she had left. Something happened to me, she whispered, her voice cracking. And I've been carrying it alone. The audience gasped in unison. But Kristen wasn't done. She lifted her gaze again, eyes full of fear and determination. And what she revealed next would send shockwaves far beyond the walls of that studio, becoming the moment the media would replay for days, the confession that would ignite headlines around the world. The unraveling was no longer happening. It was about to explode. The silence that followed Kristen Bell's exit felt like a vacuum. Heavy, stretching, almost unnatural. The cameras were still rolling, and millions were watching. But inside the studio it felt as if the air itself had stopped moving. Joy Behar remained frozen in her chair, lips parted slightly, as if waiting for someone to tell her what she had just done, or whether she had gone too far. The audience didn't applaud. No cue light instructed them to. Instead, dozens of people exchanged wide-eyed glances, hands covering mouths, the shock settling in like dust after a demolition. Sunny Hostin shifted uncomfortably, her eyes lingering on the door Kristen had walked through. We should probably cut to break, she whispered, but the producers made no move. It was as though they were letting the moment breathe, knowing it would become the kind of television clip replayed for years. Only Whoopi moved. She leaned forward, her elbows on the table, her voice low but firm. Joy, what was that? Joy blinked. Slowly, as if waking up from a dream she wasn't sure she wanted to remember. I was just asking a question. That wasn't a question, Sarah shot back. That was a hit. Joy scoffed, but her voice wavered. Come on. These people, actors, they always talk about their mental health. They want the sympathy. They want the clickbait. So I asked. Kristen wasn't doing that, Anna said, shaking her head. She was being real. And you cornered her. Joy's jaw tightened. Whether from defensiveness or the sting of regret, no one could tell. But the tension between the hosts was so thick it felt like the cameras should have cut away. Still, they didn't. Behind the table, producers were whispering urgently into headsets, trying to decide how to salvage the segment, or if it even could be salvaged. But the damage had already reached beyond the stage, because by then, clips were already circulating. Someone from the audience, maybe several someones, had recorded the moment Kristen's voice cracked, the tears sliding down her cheek, the way she whispered, I can't do this. Within minutes, those uploads hit social media like sparks in dry brush. The words Kristen Bell and The View shot up the trending list. The moment was no longer a studio incident. It was a wildfire. Back inside the studio, the producers made a decision at last. The floor manager stepped forward, calling out, "We're going to break. We're going to break." His voice was urgent, trying to patch the tear in the show's fabric before it widened. The theme music blasted loudly, too loudly, as if volume alone could drown the tension. The screen faded to commercial. And the second the cameras went off, everything erupted. "What were you thinking?" Sarah's voice wasn't just loud. It was sharp, slicing through the chaos. Joy stood, hands on her hips, bracing. "Everyone's acting like I stabbed her." I asked what everyone else was already thinking. "No," Whoopi countered, stepping closer. "You asked what you were thinking, and you didn't care how it landed." Joy pressed her fingers into her forehead. The studio lights seemed harsh now, exposing every crease in her expression, every tremor of doubt. "I didn't mean to upset her," Anna whispered. "Intent doesn't erase impact." Joy's shoulders dropped for the first time. Maybe she understood. Or maybe she simply realized the fallout was bigger than she imagined. Because the crew members were no longer pretending not to listen. Some whispered to each other, their eyes wide, knowing this moment would echo in entertainment headlines by evening. Sunny stepped in, her voice calmer. "Joy, Kristen came here today because she trusted us. And right now, she probably feels like she made a mistake." Joy exhaled heavily and walked toward the backstage hallway, as though pulled by some invisible force. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she wanted to salvage something before it shattered completely. But as she reached the corridor, she stopped. Kristen was still there. Still trembling. Still shaken. Her makeup smudged, her breathing shallow but steadying. A producer held a water bottle out for her. "Kristen, we're so sorry this happened." She nodded absently, though her gaze was distant. She looked like someone replaying the moment frame by frame, trying to figure out how a conversation meant to promote her project turned so deeply personal. And so deeply painful. Joy approached carefully. "Kristen." Kristen looked up. Her eyes were tired. Red. Damp. Joy swallowed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to come out that way." Kristen didn't lash out. Didn't yell. Didn't accuse. She simply said, "It wasn't the question. It was the way you asked it." Joy blinked. That hit harder than any argument would have. Kristen continued, voice quiet but unwavering. "I've talked about my anxiety because I know someone out there needs to hear it. Not because it makes a headline. And today, I felt like a sideshow." Joy's lips parted, but she said nothing. What could she say? Kristen gently tightened her grip on the water bottle. "I just need to leave. Please." She walked past Joy. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just exhausted. And that made it hurt even more. As Kristen exited the building, a wall of paparazzi and entertainment bloggers surged forward, flashes exploding like white lightning. Microphones extended. Dozens of voices shouted. "Kristen, are you okay? Did Joy Behar make you cry? Are you leaving the View upset? Do you want to respond?" Kristen shielded her eyes, fighting the dizzying wave of noise. Her publicist tried to guide her through the chaos, but the questions followed her like predators. And in the span of 10 minutes, the narrative had already fractured into a dozen versions online. One clip showed Kristen's trembling hands. Another showed Joy's accusatory tone. Another highlighted Whoopi trying to intervene. Users dissected every moment, every breath, turning the studio into a battlefield of public opinion. Some comments defended Kristen. "She's human. She was vulnerable. Joy crossed a line." Others defended Joy. "She's a comedian. She asks tough questions. Kristen was too sensitive." But most viewers agreed on one thing. No one expected that kind of breakdown on live television. The View's PR team acted quickly, releasing a statement. "We stand with Kristen Bell and respect her willingness to discuss mental health. Today's exchange became more emotional than expected, and we are reviewing the moment internally." It helped, but it wasn't enough. Because now journalists were calling. Twitter threads were multiplying. Reaction videos were hitting YouTube. Some highlighted Kristen's courage. Some criticized Joy's insensitivity. Some analyzed the entire interaction frame by frame like it was a crime scene. By evening, the moment was international news. A headline read, "Kristen Bell walks off the View in emotional breakdown after Joy Behar question." Another, "Did Joy Behar go too far?" Heated exchange sparks debate. A podcast host posted, "Just watch the clip, and wow, that was painful. Kristen Bell deserves better." And in the center of the storm was Kristen herself, sitting quietly in her hotel room, legs curled beneath her, breathing slow and intentional. Her phone buzzed nonstop, but she didn't check it. Her husband sat beside her, his hand wrapped gently around hers. "You look tired," he whispered. "I am," she replied softly. "Do you regret going?" She closed her eyes for a long moment. Then, with a voice that trembled but didn't break, "No, just how it went." Meanwhile, Joy sat alone in her dressing room, hands clasped together, elbows on her knees, staring at the floor. The muffled sound of studio cleanup filled the hallway outside. She whispered to herself, "I really messed up." It wasn't a punchline. It wasn't a joke. It was the admission she'd been avoiding. Even Whoopi, who had seen more on-air conflict than most people experience in a lifetime, admitted quietly to a producer, "We need to do better for our guests." And the world kept watching. Because this wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. It was raw. It was human. It was real. And the internet devours real. In the days that followed, Kristen's fans rallied behind her. Mental health advocates praised her for walking away from a situation that pushed her too far. Think pieces filled entertainment sites, analyzing the societal pressure placed on public figures to remain composed, even when unraveling inside. Eventually, Kristen released a statement on her own social media. It read, "I believe in openness. I believe in difficult conversations. But I also believe in respecting boundaries. Yesterday was overwhelming, but I'm okay. Thank you to everyone who checked on me." Support flooded her comments. And then Joy posted her own message. "I made a mistake. My question was insensitive, and I regret the way it made Kristen feel. I've reached out to apologize privately. I am learning like everyone else." Some applauded her accountability. Some said it was too late. Some said it wasn't enough. But the moment had already entered the cultural archive. A clip that would be replayed, discussed, dissected. A reminder that even the brightest celebrities carry shadows. And even the most seasoned hosts can cross lines without realizing it. As the dust settled, Stage View's narrator voice returns, direct, gripping, cinematic. "And now it falls to you. What did you think? Did Joy push too far? Was Kristen right to walk off? Was this an honest mistake, or a moment of cruelty disguised as a question?" Let us know your take in the comments below. And if you want more explosive, emotional, dramatic breakdowns of Hollywood's most shocking moments, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us here at Stage View, where the real stories unfold. Because sometimes the most unforgettable moments are the ones they never meant for us to see.